Hey guys, I'm excited. I've got my friend Shannon Galpin with me today, and Shannon is a family nurse practitioner, but she's also an expert as her specialization in weight loss. And what was the other thing, Shannon? Tell me again.
Hormones.
Hormones, the super important hormones. So
Yes.
I've been working with Shannon personally for, I don't know, like 6 months, a year, it feels like. I look at her as a doctor because I think she's had almost that level of education and she's just giving me such great advice. A quick story, and then we're going to interview Shannon. But I got to tell you my story about Shannon real quickly is that when I first started seeing Shannon, she didn't know this, but I had just gotten physical from my own doctor, and I had been diagnosed with having high cholesterol, which a guy in his 50s, not uncommon, and overweight, not uncommon. And so I went to Shannon and they did a blood test. And I didn't say I'd already had a blood test, but I was just curious to see what their blood test would come back with. Same thing. No miraculous overnight. It was just a wrong test. I actually did have high cholesterol. So Shannon worked with me on getting my weight down and got my weight down and now changed my diet. And now I didn't just got down, I think now 25 pounds down. And my when I went back and retested with my doctor, recently. He was shocked because I got it down, my number down 40 points, so I don't have to be on a statin. So I was thrilled.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah. So Shannon and I have known each other for many, many years, but I just became the client of hers. And the reason I brought Shannon on is because I think as realtors and as business professionals, we're dealing with stress. We're dealing with a lot of things that can affect our health, and our health is so important. So Shannon, thank you
Yeah.
for being on the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for sharing that story. I think that's probably one of the greatest joys I get out of what I do every day is just helping people like yourself who are busy professionals who want to work on their health, but sometimes may not have all the tools or may not know exactly what to do because you're right. Like people in their 50s often, may have high cholesterol, could be due to what they're eating, could be due to genetics, and weight also plays a huge role in that. And so we have many options now with injectable medications and oral medications and just things that we can do through proper diet and exercise that really help us lower our cholesterol, help with our weight, and in turn also often helps with our liver function and all those types of things. So
Yeah.
again, helping people like yourself and just people who are, especially people who are at the age where women going through menopause, men going through what we call andropause, our hormones are shifting and changing. And I find that a lot of my patients come to me for hormones and weight loss because they hit this wall where they're all of a sudden feeling certain symptoms that have really led them down a path where they're not feeling great and they're definitely not functioning at their optimum. And so that's really where I love meeting people again like yourself who I can help. And sometimes it's as simple as one meeting, just looking at labs and kind of seeing what your symptoms are and we can kind of get a plan. And sometimes it can be a much longer journey because some people have a lot more weight to lose than 25 pounds, say.
Yeah.
So I really just like meeting my patients where they're at and just kind of figuring out how I can help them.
So I think it's really interesting when because in as a business professional, whether you're, I'm in real estate, but whatever business you're in, to play at a high level,
Yes.
you have to have high energy. And
Right.
I think that's often a disconnect is that you see a lot of people that put all their time and effort into building their businesses,
Right.
let their health go. And I'm guilty of it. I think we're all guilty of it to some degree. And I look at you as almost not just like a health professional, but almost like a performance coach, because I think in order to be at your optimum best version of yourself, you have to be certainly focused on your business side, but you got to be focused on your health side. Your health is your greatest asset. And if your health goes away, what do you got, right? So I think it's a really important conversation we're having today.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think, as you know, I was in real estate many years ago. I think real estate is really just kind of a tough field because you have to always be on, right? You always have to be, like you said, functioning at this higher level and always being on. And sometimes that can be very exhausting. And so I think the mental piece, like what you do with your clients, coaching people, I think is super important because the mental aspect of life in general, especially when you're talking about being on point and being successful in real estate is hard to do. And so the mental mindset piece, I feel like that means a lot of work, but I feel like what I do complements that because when someone is struggling with their business or struggling with maybe even their health, like they tend to go in tandem. And so working with people. And I definitely think mindset is huge, but I feel like what I do helps change their mindset because
100%.
someone could be stuck in a rut where they're feeling overweight, sluggish, tired, all types of symptoms. When you're talking about hormones, oftentimes it tends to be brain fog, loss of muscle mass. And in all that happening, we don't function at our best because we don't feel great. And
Yeah.
so to speak to what you said earlier, people functioning at their best, a lot of times as we start to age, even in our younger years, but definitely as we start to go through, like I said, menopause, andropause, and then just aging in general, I feel like we have to make more effort in how we take care of ourselves. And so hormone optimization, help with weight loss, but also managing our adrenal glands, managing our thyroid, making sure our cholesterol is good, reducing our risk of stroke and heart attack. Like these are all the things that I try and individually and then holistically manage with my patients so that they can function at that optimal level. Because there's no way you're going to be a very successful real estate agent. There's no way I'm going to be a successful provider if I am not prioritizing my health. And in doing that is also prioritizing my nutrition and my fitness. And so I think it kind of all comes together holistically when we're trying to help people. But you certainly can't function, in my opinion, at an optimal level without managing all of that.
Yeah, because if you're not managing that, you're tired, lethargic, you're depressed. There's so many things that go along with it, and you just don't feel at your mental best. And I
Yeah.
think my journey is I'm a pretty positive person, but I feel way better now.
Right.
So I think
Right.
it does help. So let's walk people through this. So somebody comes to you and says, Shannon, okay, I need a change in my life. I need to, be at my best version of myself. What does that look like? Are you talking about doing some blood tests? Weight? What does that all look like for you in general?
Yeah, so I function in what's called functional medicine. So functional medicine is root cause analysis medicine.
Mhm.
And oftentimes functional medicine has a triangle that we work in. And in that triangle, it's looking at your thyroid, looking at your adrenal function, and looking at your hormones. And we know that within that circle tends to be a lot of the stuff that we're talking about: weight gain, fatigue, loss of muscle mass, brain fog. Like those are some of the symptoms that we commonly see. Aside from that, we also manage, like you mentioned earlier, cholesterol. Like that's super important for someone's overall health and wellness. So we check that as well. But in general, when people come in, and this is, again, this is with me as a provider, but this can be in any functional medicine clinic,
Sure.
is we actually like to order labs. We do a pretty extensive lab panel. It looks, in addition to the things I mentioned, it looks at vitamins, it looks at your liver, kidney function. We look at just general health markers to try and say, hey, what could be going on with you that we can help you with? And from there, we get the labs, we kind of go over all those labs and develop a plan. What I see now is I do see a lot of people who are overweight, sluggish, maybe have pre-diabetes or diabetes. And so insulin resistance plays a part in like weight management. And so when we look at those markers, we try and say, hey, these are the symptoms that you're having and experiencing, and what could it be due in your labs? But at the end of the day, what I tell patients is I really like to sit with my patients and talk about what they're feeling, because those labs are just, they're a great way to look at the data and see what's there. But the reality is, I don't treat those labs. I'm treating the human response to what they're going through. And so it's really about a health journey, and to say, hey, what do these labs show? But how are you feeling? And how do we come up with a plan together that works for you to help get you to a place where you are feeling good? You are sleeping well, you are eating well, you're managing your weight, you're managing cholesterol. And oftentimes we do all that kind of simultaneously because they all kind of help each other, right? We know that if you're sleeping better and you're eating better and exercising more, that your hormones are going to improve.
Mhm.
If you're have high cholesterol, we know that if you eat better and you exercise more, that's also going to help your cholesterol. So from our perspective, and what I do is I try and do that all at the same time, so that we can kind of just work on the many aspects. Because what we know is when we do all that, it kind of comes together and people just start to feel better.
Sure.
Um, yeah, so it's really kind of a holistic approach, but it's just meeting people where they're at.
I think it was interesting. You said a journey too, because I think when we think about it, going to a doctor or going to a health professional like yourself, we just want to be fixed. Like, I don't feel good, so fix me is kind of the approach, right? But this is not that. This is more of an ongoing, I
Yeah,
am maintaining myself at a high level. So this requires an investment of time, money, energy, right? So what's
100.
interesting is we'll go out and buy a car and spend $1,000 a month on our car, but we're
Yes.
really resistant to spending $500 a month on our health, right? It's a really interesting kind of thought process we go through with that. But I think if we want to get to our optimum position of operation, this is something we got to think about. We got to make some investments. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah,
it-
I love what you said,
yeah,
making
yeah, go
an
ahead.
investment, right? It's making an investment in
Right.
yourself. And I feel like what I tell my patients when they come in and I meet someone for the first time, yes, it's a journey and it is an investment, but you have to protect that investment. And how you
Yeah.
do that is by getting the tools that you need. And then the work is really done outside of here. My patient earlier was visibly upset and crying and because she had kind of fallen off the wagon, if you will. She'd gotten away from her health journey and her investment in her health. And so part of that investment is that you have to invest and then make sure that you're staying the course. And then if you get off course, you have to get back on right away. If we start eating Chick-fil-A, but we have it one time and we have a bad day, but we got to get back on the health journey and that investment, because if you don't protect it, it won't improve over time.
And that's interesting because the reality is that we'll all fall off the wagon here. I mean,
Yes.
just every
Yes.
one of us is going to fall off the wagon, right?
Right.
So I've been in Nashville for a week. I guarantee you we were off the wagon while we were in Nashville, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's about getting back on the horse and knowing what you're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Somebody told me a long time ago, they said, "Why, when I go to my doctor, they always tell me the same thing, eat better, exercise more," which we all know we're supposed to be doing. But I think working with somebody like you, like a performance coach, it's more like I need somebody to kind of be accountable to in some degree, just like any coach. And then you walk in and you say, "Okay, Shannon, I didn't do what I'm supposed to be doing. Tell me what I got to do," right? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it. I also think the other part of it is that I am really into, and I've really gotten more into over the last few years, is really holding myself accountable. And I think, as top performers, that's what we have to do. We have to set high goals for ourselves and hold ourselves to those higher standards. And then when we start to see ourselves fall off, it's really have that conversation with ourselves to say, hey, what do I really want to accomplish here? Because nothing happens easily that's really worth doing. And
Yeah.
so our health is no exception. Being a certain weight that we want to be, having a certain look that we want to have, or feeling that we want to have, and all those things that we all want at a certain age. I'm almost 60 years old, and I'm still every day waking up, prioritizing my health, prioritizing my workouts, prioritizing my nutrition. And I feel like we all have to really consciously make an effort to do that. And like you said, we all have bad days. We all have times where we go on trips and have fun, but you got to get back home and get right back at it. And the benefit of it is that we feel great today. We're performing at a high level, but also we can do that for an extended period of time. We can keep working until we're in our 60s and 70s if we want,
Right.
right? We can still keep functioning at a high level at later ages in life if we're prioritizing our health.
Which you bring up something that's really I've gotten passionate about. Since I turned 50, I got this passion about longevity. When
Yes.
people get a little bit older, you're like, I am focused on longevity. How long can I not just be alive, but be alive with an active lifestyle and be able to travel and do all the things I want to do. So longevity for me is a big part of what I'm doing, working with you and really focusing on how can I stay at my optimum health as long as possible. So I think that's a big part of it, right?
Huge. It's a huge part of it. And
Right.
I see patients who haven't done that, who, drink too much alcohol, smoke, don't manage their health conditions, don't take their supplements, things like that. The thing is we also have tools in our toolbox to help with quitting habits like that. Like if you need to quit smoking, there's tools to help you. There's tools out there. And I think part of it is just being open-minded to change. And knowing that to be healthy and to be a top performer takes being open to change and feedback, and sometimes hearing things that we don't maybe want to hear, but that we need to hear to reach our goals and to be a top performer.
Absolutely. So let's break down some of the
Yeah.
tools on both sides of the fence. And we don't want to go too long here, but obviously there's things for men and there's things for women. And then
Yes.
there's some universal tools that both parties use, right? I know as somebody that is around a lot of guys my age,
Yes.
obviously testosterone replacement therapy is a big deal. So
Yes.
that's something that, probably most guys over 50 are getting tested for now. Is that a
Yes.
big part of your practice?
That's a huge part of my practice for both men and women.
Mhm.
Women, we need about a tenth of the testosterone that men need. So if a man's taking 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, then women, are taking 10.
Yeah.
But the benefits are the same. I have this huge list in my office right behind me of all the benefits of testosterone, and it really is less fatigue, better weight management, less midsection weight gain, um, muscle maintenance, so maintaining being able to build and maintain muscle and in our 50s and up, more ability to focus, better sexual function. The list is long, and so yes, you're absolutely correct. The testosterone has so many benefits, and I think sometimes there's misinformation out there about testosterone.
Mhm.
Some people, a lot of primary care providers don't think that hormones should be checked. Before I came here, the people I work with said, well, why would you check those hormones? They are just what they are. And that to me is not the answer. The answer is looking at it and then addressing the deficiencies to help people feel better.
What about so we have testosterone on the guy's side.
Yes.
It's to some degree women too, but what for women there's also hormones that are replaced, right?
Yeah, so for women who have gone through menopause, we replace estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And
Gotcha.
so, for women, it's a little bit different because for guys, it tends to be a little more straightforward with testosterone. But with women, testosterone, we have the same benefits and we have the same need. We just need it in a much smaller dose, obviously. But for women, the hormone optimization is super important. One, for our bone health, we know that estrogen plays a vital role in how we age in our bones. And so our overall risk for osteoporosis and osteopenia or bone loss is super important to be on estrogen for that. Progesterone also helps with irritability and sleeping and bloating and things like that. And so there's a lot of women going through this who need hormone support. And I've had patients come to me literally within the last week telling me that their primary care said that they didn't need hormones. And so, when I hear this, it just kind of makes me feel for women because women not only feel better, but their bones are stronger and there's so many benefits.
So we have these therapies for both sides, men and women, and everybody's got different needs. And then, of course, everybody's talking about GLP-1s and all those kind of weight benefits. I know that's a part of your practice too. So what does that look like? I mean, what do you look at there?
So, the whole weight loss peptide therapy is really exploding. Um, about a decade or so ago, we started with what's called semaglutide, which was a single peptide, a GLP-1, glucagon-like one peptide that was used to help with the way our body processes sugars and the foods that we eat. And so it was a weight loss peptide. Then
Right.
they added in a second peptide called the GIP peptide. That peptide actually works on our brain and satiety and cravings. And so it really has been a huge game changer for people who suffer from cravings and food noise because it kind of quiets and hushes all of that. The last peptide that we're seeing come out now is a peptide that works on the liver and the production of glucagon, which is glucose and sugar. And so what we're seeing is every so many years, more and more research is coming out about these peptides. And so the peptide therapy for me is the future. Um, Definitely for weight loss because there are more and more peptides coming out to help with weight loss, but also they help with cardiovascular risk disease reduction. They help with cholesterol. They help with liver. So they help so many things in the body. We used to hear a lot of people ask, what are the long-term risks? Well, now what we're finding out is the long-term benefits because there's more research now that has shown the connection to not only weight loss, but liver function and, other chronic health conditions that can really be impacted by taking these peptides. We also know that peptides play a huge role with hormones. There are peptides like tesamorelin, sermorelin, um, peptides first, because there's one called a glow stack. Like there's all these other hormones coming out that work really nicely, or peptides coming out that work nicely with hormones to complement people's overall health and wellness. So really whatever you need help with, whether it be muscle building, sexual function, skin, hair, like there's so many peptides out there that I just feel like we're just starting to see the possibilities that all these peptides can help with.
Very interesting when you look at it from that perspective. Like you really anything you need, you can kind of start to fill the blanks.
Yes.
When you look at it, so you're talking about the hormone replacement, the peptide opportunity, obviously diet, exercise, and just for me, because I'm just curious about it on the longevity front. What about, because I hear a lot about this because it's on my TikTok feed, because obviously I've been figured out here because I'm looking at this, but like NAD, for
Oh my
instance.
gosh. So I'm obsessed with NAD. I love NAD. I personally inject once a week. I have patients that do it twice a week. But NAD, we know NAD is nicotinamide. It affects affects every cell in the body. So it affects cell growth and cell turnover. So not so much for people who have cancer. Cancer is like the one reason that we don't want to take it. But for healthy people like you and I, NAD will help with it's anti-aging, it's anti-inflammatory, it helps with skin, it helps with hair, it helps with muscles, it just helps with almost anything that we can talk about, it plays a role in that. So it's really important. It's really helpful for people to take it. Like I said, you can take it in an injectable once or twice a week in a liposomal form. Some people are turning to liposomal forms of it, which goes into the fat tissue because they're more affordable.
Mhm.
But the benefits for NAD, there's just so many. I mean, I have again list in my office I could show you, but there's just so many to them. But NAD is it's probably if I'm going to say to people if they want to start in the peptide journey and you haven't been on any peptides, that's always a nice place to start.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, my takeaway from just talking to you even more so is that every single person that's listening to this needs to align with a health coach, somebody like you that can really walk them through this. And it's not necessarily your general practitioner, because as we've talked about, some of them aren't like that's not their thought process. Their thought process is you're sick, let's fix you, get out.
that's right.
Right?
Yes.
Not the
Yeah.
same thing, right? So how would you recommend somebody find, like, obviously not everybody lives in Southern Oregon.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how would somebody find a person like you,
Great
somewhere?
question. So, I would say researching functional medicine, hormone specialist, peptide specialist, those are kind of all the buzzwords, if you will, that would help someone find it. I do feel like, I'm being on social media, trying to promote my own business, but also just, seeing patients and seeing other people on social media. I've realized that more and more of these clinics are popping up because people are wanting it more. They're wanting, like you said, the longevity medications and options. And you're right, it's not about coming from a place of illness, it's coming from a place that I want to be the best version of myself, to
Yeah.
be a top performer, to feel great, to feel good in my own skin. And so I think just researching some of those things online and bigger cities often have clinics like this. Here at One Peak, we have about 20 clinics now that are all over the state of Oregon. I know we're talking about branching out into other states, but I do know that there are lots of clinics like this popping up. So people should be able to find a place. And if you are in Oregon, I'm more than happy to help you. I do see patients via telehealth and I see patients all over the state of Oregon.
Nice. And just so people can connect with you personally, because you are building your social audience, how could people find and just connect with you just for ongoing kind of social
Um,
motivation?
So my Instagram is shannongalpin.fnp. So you can find me on social media. You can send me questions, talk to me. That's probably my greatest joy in doing what I get to do is being able to talk to people and help them in any way that I can and find a path that works well for them to get them back to their health and wellness. So if you have questions, concerns, or if I can be of help or even help you find a provider in your area, just let me know. I'd be happy to help.
Perfect. Shannon, thank you so much for all your guidance and all your wisdom. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have an awesome day.
You too.